Hey guys, welcome. It's that time again. Short of sorts. Your boy Rencity, this thing as he's done for how long? 60 episodes now. That's what we're on, episode 60. So let's do what we do in every episode and honor the people that wore the jersey that matches the episode. So let's hop right to it. Like I said, jersey number 60. Who's the first person you're thinking of? We'll start in the NFL with a linebacker who also played center. One of the rare people to be a 60-minute guy, but Chuck Bednarik, Concrete Charlie. He's got one of the most memorable photos in NFL history. You might remember it, where he's standing down looking at the poor Frank Gifford. That Gifford hit actually caused him to retire briefly, but we'll get more to that. Bednarik, he was born in Pennsylvania to Slovakian parents that had just emigrated to the States. He played football in high school, but entered the U.S. Air Force, where he served as a B-24 waist gunner with the 8th Air Force. During World War II, Bednarik flew on 30 combat missions over Nazi Germany. He was awarded the Air Medal, 4 Oak Leaf Clusters, the European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal, and 4 Battle Stars for his military service. Following World War II, Bednarik would attend the University of Pennsylvania, where he'd play center, linebacker, sometimes punter. This dominant play earned him All American accolades, led to the Eagles drafting him first overall in the 1949 NFL Draft. His rookie season, the Eagles won the NFL championship. This was before the Super Bowl days, of course. Bednarik would be an intimidating force, both sides of the ball, crushing offensive players with heavy tackles and pushing around defenders from the center position. Like I said, I mentioned that hit on Gifford back in 1960. That tackle was known as the hit. It put Gifford in the hospital. He was knocked unconscious. Later that season, in the NFL championship game, the Eagles would take on my Packers. And there was a notable play in that game that would restructure the rules in the NFL. Bednarik tackled Packers Jim Taylor at the Eagles' 8-yard line and just laid there on top of Taylor, killing time until time expired. The Eagles would win a championship, and that controversy led to the NFL making it a penalty for the defense to lay on an offensive player in a time-wasting manner. It was also a big moment, as it was the lone playoff defeat for legendary coach Vince Lombardi, which the NFL winning trophy is named after. The 2 NFL championships in Philly were big, as they didn't win again until Super Bowl 52 when the Eagles beat the Patriots, sorry. But Bednarik spent his entire career as an Eagle, racking up accolades the entire way. 10-time first team All Pro, 8 Pro Bowls, named in the NFL 1950s All Decade Team, as well as the 50th, 75th, and 100th anniversary teams. The Eagles honored Bednarik, naming him to their 75th anniversary team, inducting him into their Hall of Fame. His number 60 is also retired by the franchise. Bednarik was inducted into the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. And you can't talk about the history of the NFL with talking about Concrete Charlie. Bednarik passed away in 2015 after falling ill. He was 89 years old at the age of his passing, and unfortunately, it was said he was suffering from dementia for years from football-related injuries, which, yes, unfortunately has happened to a lot of players that have retired. But we'll stay with legendary football players, and we'll go to one that wasn't linebacker. We're talking about Otto Graham here, and a lot of people say, didn't he wear 14? Well, there's a little story to that. We're gonna want to go into a time machine again for a player that was again well before my time. And it's wild how Graham even got in the pro football. He went to Northwestern University on a basketball scholarship, but football would become his jam. He'd light it up on the field while still doing his thing on the basketball court. He'd have a brief stint in World War II with the Navy, and after that, he'd play for the Rochester Royals of the NBL, which was a pre forerunner to the NBA, and they'd win the 45-46 championship. Cleveland Browns coach Paul Brown would sign Otto Graham to join his football team after being impressed by playing against them in college. The Browns played in the AAFC, the All American Football Conference, and he'd be the face of the league. Graham and the Browns dominated, winning 4 titles, with Graham MVP of the league twice. When the league disbanded, Graham was the all-time leading passer, having the most touchdowns and yards. The great play would continue for the Browns when they joined the NFL in 1950. So much so that the Browns won the NFL championship in the first year in the NFL for them, beating the Rams 30-28, with Graham passing 298 yards, 4 touchdowns, and rushing for 99. Following seasons, the Brown would lose to the Rams in a match of the championship game, but Brown would win his first NFL MVP. He'd win 2 more NFL championships, earning 2 more MVPs along the way, while also making 5 Pro Bowls, and was one of the early superstars of the game. I mentioned his 14 is retired by the Browns, even though he wore 60 for most of his career. And that's because in 1952, the NFL passed a rule requiring offensive linemen to wear numbers 50 to 79. So referees could easily identify ineligible receivers. So that is why he took the number 14. It was because of the rule change, and that's what they retired. The 60 has been worn by other players, but yeah, he liked that number, but the NFL is like, we're doing this change, so you got to change it. He wore the 48 at Northwestern, so he's had a few different numbers, but he was known more for wearing the 60, which what puts him in this episode. He was named to the 1950s All-Decade Team, NFL 75th 100th Anniversary Team, the Browns Ring of Honor. Autogram is also a member of the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. Once his playing days end, he'd coach Coast Guard Academy before having a brief stint in the NFL as a GM with the Washington franchise. He passed away in 2003 with a heart aneurysm at the age of 82. We'll leave linebackers just for a little bit here. Our next number is 60. Sorry, we went away from linebackers briefly, but we're coming back. Larry Grantham. As many linebackers highlighted on this podcast jersey mentions, he was undersized for the position. He wasn't scouted as a football player and actually attended Ole Miss to play baseball. After blocking the plate on a play, he was asked to try out for the team, and he'd make the team and was part of this tough Mississippi defense, earning second-team All-SC, first-team All-SC the following season. This led to the New York Titans, who would later become the Jets of the AFL, drafting Larry Grantham in the second round. He was also chosen by the Colts in the NFL, but chose to play with the former. He was a 5-time first-team All-AFL and 5-time second-team All-NFL. He's a member of the 68 AFL championship-winning Jets team that took down the Raiders, which earned them a spot in Super Bowl III, where we all know Joe Namath made his famous guarantee and the finger point after they upset the Baltimore Colts. Kornheiser says that's the only thing in the Jets' history that's worth mentioning. But he's one of only 20 players who have competed in the AFL for its entire 10-year existence. He would play his last professional season with the Florida Blazers in the Startup World Football League, a league that lasted a little over a full season. He'd go into broadcasting after his playing days, but would battle alcoholism. It was an illness that he wouldn't do too well with. And he would also battle another illness as he faced lymphoma. He'd get treated and go into remission, and he'd get honored by his former team, where the Jets inducted Grantham into the Ring of Honor. He would pass away in 2017 at the age of 78 from the complications of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And we'll stay on the defensive side here, going to our next number 60. I'm talking about Al Bubba Baker. He used his size and athleticism to light it up and collegiately for the Colorado State Rams. This led to the 6'6" defensive end getting drafted in the second round of the 78 draft by the Detroit Lions. Sacks were an unofficial stat his rookie season, but it was said he would have had 23, which would be an NFL single-season record. It is an unofficial number, though, like I said, as the NFL didn't start recording sacks until the 1982 season, officially. Regardless, that beastly performance led to Baker winning the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, and this earned him his one and only first-team All-Pro selection. That was one of 3 straight Pro Bowl selections, and then Baker would go on to play for the Cardinals, Browns, and Vikings before returning to the Browns for a second stint and calling it a career. Al Baker was named to the Detroit Lions 75th anniversary team and the Detroit Lions all-time team. Going to the other side of the ball, we go to an offensive tackle. And next number 60 on our list sounds like a name from a Key and Peele skit. I'm, of course, talking about DeBrickashaw Ferguson. You don't hear DeBrickashaw very often, but Ferguson played college football at the University of Virginia. Fantastic player there. He'd earned 2 first-team All-ACC selections. Sorry, needing a little sip there. As a first-team All-American nod as well. He wore the 66 in college, which is retired by the university. But that led to the New York Jets selecting the local New Yorker 4th overall in the 2006 draft, where he'd wear the 60, and he'd have a great rookie season, being named to the All-Rookie team. He'd make 3 Pro Bowl appearances over his 10 seasons there, which was entirely with the Jets, and he was inducted into the Jets Ring of Honor. Our last 60 mention in the NFL, we'll stick with the offensive line. He's a center that's still playing for the Patriots, David Andrews. He played against some stiff competition in college, suiting up for the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC. Senior season, he earned second team All SEC honors, but despite that, he'd go undrafted in the 2015 NFL Draft. The Patriots would sign Andrews, and he's been there since, winning 2 Super Bowls with the team, Super Bowl 51 over the Falcons and Super Bowl 53 over the Rams. The following season after that Super Bowl, Andrews was diagnosed with a pulmonary embolism, putting his season in jeopardy. He would come back from that scary diagnosis, and he's been doing great since. Despite not being named to a Pro Bowl, Andrews was named to the Patriots All-2010s team, a consistent player since coming to the league, and an underrated center in the NFL. Also, fun fact, his uncle was the late Dan Reeves, a legendary player and head coach in the NFL. We'll leave the gridiron for the baseball diamond, starting with a guy who hasn't quite hung up the cleats yet. I'm talking about left-handed pitcher Dallas Keuchel. He's a great high school player, which led to him playing college baseball for the Arkansas Razorbacks. And the Astros selected him in the 7th round of the 2009 draft. After some success in the minor league, Keuchel would get the call up and throw a complete game in just his second start. He would struggle early, but showed off his fielding prowess, winning his first of 3 straight Gold Glove awards. The following season, he'd really bring it together and light it up out of the gate, making his first All-Star game, continuing to play great throughout the season, going 20-8, which led the AL in wins, and earned him his one and only Cy Young Award. The following season, while battling injuries, Keuchel's numbers dropped, but he did still do it on the defensive end, winning that 3rd straight Gold Glove. The following season, he pitched like his normal self and made the final All-Star game of his career. But more importantly, late that season, Keuchel helped the Astros beat the LA Dodgers in the 2017 World Series. There's still people calling for an asterisk on that World Series for the alleged cheating the Astros had done involving a garbage can. But Keuchel would win one more Gold Glove with the Astros before leaving for the Braves, but he never quite regained that dominance he had earlier in his career with the Astros. He'd leave the Braves for the White Sox, where he'd earn his 5th and final Gold Glove. And he'd also go on to play with the Diamondbacks, Rangers, and Minnesota Twins. He's still not called it a career, like I said. He signed with the Mariners at the beginning of April on a minor league contract, where he's been pitching with the Mariners affiliate club, the AAA Tacoma team. He's trying to get back in the major leagues, but yeah, very famous number 60 pitcher there. The last 60 from baseball, like I said, we only got 2 here. Left-handed pitcher, he's got a doozy of a name, so I hope I don't butcher it. Scott Shunaweiss, the lefty, played collegiate ball at Duke and had to face some adversity before making it to the leagues. Being diagnosed with testicular cancer at the age of 19, he beat the disease, and it said took 6 months of chemotherapy in 3 months, like a very heavy dose. And he said the whole ordeal put things into perspective. And after that mental scare, he'd have another physical scare, undergoing Tommy John surgery. And after more time pitching in the minors, he'd finally get his call up with the Angels, where he'd sparingly start, but before getting moved to the relieving role, where he'd help contribute to the 2002 World Series Angels team that beat the Giants in 7 games. Shunaweiss would end up playing with the White Sox, Blue Jays, Reds, and Mets, but he faced even more adversity. His wife, Dawn Shunaweiss, was found dead in the Arizona home. 38-year-old's autopsy revealed the cause of death to be an overdose of cocaine and lidocaine. He and his 4 children had just celebrated their 10th anniversary earlier in the year. He tried to continue his career, but Shunaweiss was not the same following that devastating tragedy. He tried to come back with the Brewers. It just didn't pan out. He'd sign with the Red Sox, make their team before getting sent for assignment, and then he'd call it a career. But he did rock the 60 throughout. It's like the last few episodes, number 60, not a big number in the NBA. The only one I found was number 60, Jonathan Gibson, during his very brief stint with the Celtics in 2018. So brief, he suited up for 4 games with the Celtics, but he wore the 60 while doing it. After college ball, he played 4 seasons at New Mexico State. That he would go undrafted, but he's been all over the world, earning all-star nods, scoring titles, finalist, MVP, and championships across various leagues. Jonathan Gibson currently plays for Sagesse Club in the Lebanese Basketball League. We'll go to the hockey rink to wrap this up here. Most famous 60, probably the goalie between the pipes. I'm talking about former NHL goaltender Jose Theodore. Theodore was a fantastic goalie in the QMJHL, lighting up for the whole Olympics. This led to the Canadiens drafting the Quebec-born goalie in the second round of the '94 draft. He'd split time between the AHL affiliate Fredericton Canadiens and the NHL parent club, where he sparingly made starts, including the postseason. Following season, he'd make appearances in the playoffs again, despite not playing in the regular season. The next season, he'd get his first time playing a regular full-time NHL player role, where he'd really take off from there, becoming just the sixth goaltender to directly score a goal into an open net. And 2002, Theodore's first All-Star selection was also his best season. He'd win the Vezina for the best goalie and the Hart for MVP the same season. He'd make one more All-Star game with the Canadiens before playing with the Avalanche, Capitals, Wild, and Panthers. He's also represented Canada and has a World Juniors gold medal. Sticking with hockey, the number 60 on our list is Finnish center Marcus Granlund. Globetrotter was dazzled in all leagues he's played in, starting off in the Finnish leagues in his native country. He'd get selected in the second round of the 2011 NHL draft by the Flames, where he'd come to North America and suit up for the AHL affiliate Abbotsford Heat. He struggled to adapt to life in Canada, though. And he had a clause in his contract that would allow him to return to Finland. Not making much of an impact with the Flames, he'd get traded to the Canucks, where he perhaps his best seasons in the NHL. They didn't make him a contract offer. He'd become a free agent, signing with the Oilers, but didn't have much of an impact and got sent down for assignment. After the COVID pandemic hit, Granlund returned to Europe and played in Russia in the KHL before leaving the club there after the invasion of Ukraine. You can now find Granlund playing in the Swiss League, playing for HC Lugano. Our last number 60 jersey mention, another goaltender. I'm talking about Winnipeg Jets backup Colin Delia. Delia is from the hockey factory of Rancho Cucamonga, California. He played Div 1 college hockey with the Merrimack Warriors. He'd go undrafted in the NHL, but signed with the Blackhawks. He spent most of his time playing in the AHL with the Rockford Ice Hogs. After becoming a free agent, he'd signed with the Canucks. After a short time there, he'd signed with the Winnipeg Jets, where he hasn't seen a lot of time and has mostly worked as an emergency backup. But yeah, 60's kind of tough to find in the NHL there. Jose Theodore is the main guy it seems in the NHL, which is a good segue to go into the NHL here, starting on the ice with the NHL playoffs. We've seen some good hockey. A lot of teams are punching their ticket to the second round, with others right there. We'll start with the New York Rangers. They took care of the Washington Capitals with relative ease. Last episode, they were up 1-0 in the series, and from that point going on, they reeled off 3 straight wins, punched their ticket to second round. We got a new first for Capitals Alexander Ovechkin, and not a very good one. It was the first time he'd go an entire series without registering a point. No goals, no assists. I picked the Rangers to represent the East in the Stanley Cup Finals, and there's nothing in that series that would make me change my mind there. Who would play the Rangers in the second round? You had the Hurricanes and Islanders battling out. The Hurricanes were up 1-0 after last week's episode, and they looked on their way to sweeping this series. Carolina had a crazy comeback in Game 2. At home, they were down 3-1 going into the third period. Then as the Hurricanes were coming back in the final period, they'd score 2 goals, just 9 seconds apart to take the lead and take a real stranglehold in the series. They then won a close one in New York, and the Islanders avoided a sweep, winning in double OT, but they were trying to extend the series a little more. But in Game 5, Carolina jumped on them early. New York did their thing to tie it, but Carolina's third period sent them on to the next round. Looking forward to that Rangers-Hurricanes second-round matchup, where the Hurricanes are looking to take down New York franchises in back-to-back rounds. We'll go to another series that has concluded, the Battle of Florida. The series was closer than the last game of the series let on. I'm not just talking geographically here. The Panthers were up 1-0 in the series after last episode. They get an OT winner in Game 2 from Carter Verhaeghe, and it really took the series by the neck. The Panthers would go into Tampa, beat the Lightning. The Lightning bounced back and won Game 4 to extend the series, only for the Panthers to take a close game into the third and just blow it up, winning 6-1 and securing their spot in the second round of the NHL playoffs. The Panthers, they've been the real deal all season. will wrap up the Eastern Conference going to the series where the winner will take on those Panthers. After last episode, the Bruins led the series 1-0, and the Leafs would get one back in Boston to tie the series. But from there going on, it was all Bruins. Bruins would win both games in Toronto, infuriating the fan base and infuriating players on the ice. Brad Marchand, he's really been a Leaf killer, the rat-like player, as people refer him. The Leafs had their backs against the wall in Game 5, visiting Boston with a chance to get sent home. McCabe put the Leafs up early, only for Trent Frederick to quickly respond for the Bruins. You'd have no more goals and go to OT, where Matthew Nyes would knock in the rebound for the Leafs, netting the OT winner and keeping the Leafs alive. Thursday, May 2nd, the Leafs host the Bruins with hopes of forcing a Game 7 there. Going to the Western Conference, we'll start with the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche. The Jets had a 1-0 series lead after last episode with that crazy 7-6 game. But from there, it's been all downhill, and we know what Avalanches do when they go downhill. They've grounded the Nets, winning the next 4 games, and by at least 3 goals each game, including a 6-2 win in Game 3. Colorado did wrap up the series last night on the road against the Jets, where the Avalanche were doing the pegging in Winnipeg. The Colorado Avalanche move on to the second round, and they'll face the winner of the Dallas Stars Las Vegas Golden Knights series. That series hadn't started before last week's episode, but this has been a fun one. The Knights won both games in Dallas, and the Stars responded by winning both games in Vegas, including an OT winner. Second goal of the night for Wyatt Johnson in Game 3 as he secured the win. This has been a heck of a battle that I could see going 7. It's amazing how out of nowhere Mark Stone is healthy again and just contributing in this series. Game 5 goes down tonight in Dallas. Will the road team continue to win? We'll find out. The next series up, Canucks and Predators. Vancouver is up 1-0 in the series after last episode. But in Game 2, the Preds would light it up, winning that game in Vancouver. The Canucks would win the next 2 games, really tough games that could have gone either way, especially Game 4 in Nashville that went to OT, and Vancouver's Elias Lindholm scored the winner. The Predators were facing elimination in Vancouver in Game 5, and they responded in a big way. Just in a scoreless game, you'd have minutes into the third period, Vancouver would go up through Nikita Zadorov, and the home crowd was already thinking second round. But minutes later, Roman Josi, who we shouted out in episode 59, would tie up the game for Nashville with just over 7 minutes to go. Then Alex Carrier would put Nashville up 2-1 late in the third. It was enough to give Nashville the win and keep their playoff run going. Game 6 will be played in Nashville Friday, May 3rd. The winner of that series, I'm thinking Vancouver should pull it off, but you never know with Nashville. They'll play the winner of the LA Kings and Oilers. This series has been exciting as well. It hadn't started before last week's episode, but it did start off with scoring. The Oilers took Game 1 7-4. The Kings responded big in Game 2, grabbing a lead and forcing the Oilers to come back and send the game to OT. Where in OT, Kopitar would score the game winner, but the Oilers responded big in LA. They'd beat the Kings 6-1, then win a much tighter game 1-0 with Stuart Skinner registering 33 saves with the shutout win. The Oilers can wrap the series up at home tonight with Game 5 going down in Edmonton this evening. Some sad news from the NHL. I've talked about the influence of commentators and the people who have covered sports in my life. We lost one of the good ones last week. Iconic voice of hockey in Canada, Bob Cole, passed away at the age of 90. He had been the voice of Hockey Night in Canada for over 50 years, and his voice is a big part of some classical NHL moments. A few coaching firings as well. The drowning San Jose Sharks dismissed David Quinn. He'd been with the club over 2 seasons, and Seattle Kraken have dismissed David Haxtell. He was the first ever head coach of the franchise and is now looking for a different job. We'll see which direction those 2 West Coast teams go. What is that? Is the door open? Oh, it's a draft. It's an NFL draft. Obviously, the big talk's about the potential of these quarterbacks taken in the first 3 picks. We know Caleb Williams of USC was probably going number 1. We've known for a while. Some scouts said, well, he's kind of like Prince, which I don't know. If he can bust Purple Rain out on the field, I'll think the Bears will be happy. I don't want to join the too much pressure on a young guy club, but I think he's the real deal, and when it's all said and done, hopefully he'll have all the Bears passing records. I mean, they're not huge records to break, but he could do it. I can say this because I'm a Packers fan, and I've always shit on the Bears, and it's hard to give them praise, but I think they got a good one on Williams there. But yeah, there's some studs following this guy. It's a lot of number one quarterbacks in the draft. They go to teams that are not set up. Bryce Young, but of last year. But the Bears in the number ninth spot in this draft, they got Odunze from Washington. And again, this team looks scary on paper. I'm not saying Williams will have a Joe Flacco like rookie season and get his team to the Super Bowl or anything, but I'm saying there's some teams that have a lot of optimism around the Bears. And as a Packer fan, I do not like it. Which brings us to the next number two in the draft. Last year's Heisman Trophy winner out of LSU, quarterback Jaden Daniels. Great looking prospect that could have gone number one if Caleb Williams wasn't in it. He'll be the new franchise quarterback of the Washington Commanders team, who has struggled to find someone to hold down that position. I wouldn't say the Commanders are set up as nicely as the Bears, but this new regime with the newly hired coach Dan Quinn is bringing some excitement to the table, and the city, the whole Washington fan base has struggled to get any excitement with Dan Snyder as owner, but they have a new owner, new coach, their new quarterback. Things are looking up for Washington. Bringing us to the number three overall choice in the draft. Like I said, another quarterback and a dude that has brothers that have excelled in sports too. Drake May out of North Carolina. Patriots needed a new quarterback at the helm for the new post-Belichick era. And it looks like new head coach Jared Mayo's got his guys. So it's not easy to follow in Tom Brady and Belichick's shoes, but someone has to do it. We'll see what they can do. I mentioned Odunze going to the Bears earlier. There were two wide receivers selected before him. The highest rated wide receiver in the draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. He's the son of Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison, and it's interesting his reluctance to sign the NFLPA licensing agreement. So his face, jersey, none of that will appear in the Madden video game until he signs that. The reasoning on that, I'm not sure. But the next wide receiver to go in the draft was LSU's Malik Neighbors, who went to the Giants, who I heard kind of had an awkward meeting with Daniel Jones. So we'll see how that relationship goes. Probably the biggest shock of the night was the Atlanta Falcons, though, selecting Washington's Michael Penix Jr. with the 8th overall pick, just like after recently signing quarterback Kirk Cousins to that huge contract. And it was said that he was contacted moments before the draft pick was made, and I guess he wasn't a big fan of it. They were hoping to improve the team there. And Penix is already 23, which is kind of old for a prospect. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if it's a guy you want to sit for multiple years, by the time he's going to get a starting job, he's going to be 25, 26. So I don't know. Maybe they don't trust Kirk's healing Achilles or Kirk in general, but we'll see what the Falcons do here. National champion J.J. McCarthy from Michigan went to Kirk Cousins' old team, the Vikings. They look very happy with who they have going forward, especially being able to snag Dallas Turner as well with the 17th pick. Another damn NFC North team getting better. Excuse me, not a fan of that. Speaking of NFC North teams getting better, I hate that the Lions got Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. He's a stud and will probably cause some havoc for Jordan Love. The Lions also re-signed some studs before the draft, giving a 4-year, $120 million deal to Amon-Ra St. Brown, making him the highest paid wide receiver in the league. They then gave offensive tackle Penei Sewell, you might remember from episode 58, a 4-year, $112 million extension. So my Packers did get some protection for Jordan Love, selecting Jordan Morgan out of Arizona to be the tackle of the future. Hoping he pans out for a long career in the green and yellow. And I'm already getting pumped for the season. That's what the draft does to you, though. It looks like it was quite an event there in Detroit. Some other signings. The Cowboys brought back a familiar face. Ezekiel Elliott joined his old club on a 1-year deal, while a former Cowboy, Michael Gallups, left Dallas to join the Raiders. Travis Kelce and the Chiefs agreed to a 2-year contract, which will make him the highest paid tight end in the NFL. And there's been justice for Reggie Bush, finally. The NCAA coming to their senses after lots of public outcry as well to get his Heisman Trophy reinstated from the 2005 season. Long overdue. I'm glad it's done. There was some footy going down in the midweek in the Premier League even, with some makeup games from the busy schedule. Arsenal hosted Chelsea in a London derby with rivals that don't really like each other. The game gave Chelsea fans an even bigger reason to hate Arsenal. It was 1-0 Arsenal at half through a Trossard goal, but the second half it got ugly. Ben White and Kai Havertz each scored a second half brace to give Arsenal the 5-0 win. Former Chelsea man Havertz was really taunting the Chelsea crowd after they've been mocking him lately, so I felt that was comfortable. Usually they don't celebrate against his former team, but that was some good shithousery there. Continuing with those midweek games, Bournemouth went on the road and held on to a 1-0 victory against Wolves despite going a man down. Crystal Palace always looked the better team in their match with Newcastle at home in Selhurst Park. And after a scoreless first half, Mateta would get a second half brace to give Palace the 2-0 win. Manchester United hosted Sheffield United in a game that should have been dominated by United, but they couldn't have predicted Onana passing it right to Sheffield United, and Jayden Bogle would find the bottom of the net, making it 1-0 at Old Trafford for the bottom of the table club. Harry Maguire would use that big head of his to tie the game up, and in the second half, Sheffield United would go up again. Diaz would put the team up, and they'd be up 2-1 after 50 minutes in Old Trafford as Man U looked stunned. But the home team would earn a penalty. Bruno Fernandes would tie it up. The captain would then score another to put the team ahead. A lovely shot into the corner for Rasmus Højlund would end his 6-game scoring drought in the Premier League. And it was a big 4-2 comeback win for Man U, even though they should never have been that close in that game. Everton hosted Liverpool in the Merseyside derby, and early into the match, it looked like Everton was awarded a penalty, but VAR took it away. Despite the disallowed goal, Everton looked to be the better team, and they were maybe involved in title chasing, not Liverpool. And Liverpool had the ball come to after a terrible clearance attempt by Liverpool, the ball came to Jared Brathwaite, whose shot just got through Alisson the past the goal line, give Everton the lead after 27 minutes. The 58th minute, Everton would double their lead when Dominic Calvert-Lewin scored off a corner kick. And Liverpool would really crank up the pressure, 77% of the ball, but they couldn't get back here, and this really hurt their title chances, going down 2-0 against their rivals Everton. Man City went on the road to take on Brighton, and they dismantled Brighton. A nice header from Kevin De Bruyne, 2 goals from Phil Foden, and another by Julian Alvarez to end it as they won 4-0. And that led into the crazy weekend game with my West Ham hosting Liverpool. It was a good game. My Hammers took the lead near the end of first half when Jared Bowen would score a header, his 16th in the Premier League, tying a single-season club record with Paulo Di Canio. Liverpool's Andy Robinson would equalize in the second half, and Liverpool would take the lead when a miss hit by Gakpo ricocheted off West Ham defender Ogbonna's dick, basically, then bouncing off Souček, and then hitting West Ham keeper Areola, a goal that put the visitors ahead 2-1. But Bowen would set up Mikel Antonio, who tied the game at 2, and that's how the game would end, and that was probably the final death blow to Liverpool's title hopes. They really probably needed a win there. Wolves hosted Luton Town and used a 2-goal cushion to withstand a late Carlton Morris goal by the visitors as Wolves held on to a 2-1 win. And it's big for them after going winless in their last 6 Premier League matches. Fulham hosted Crystal Palace in a London derby, and Fulham's Rodrigo Muniz would open the scoring in the second half. But what a shot by Crystal Palace's Jeffrey Schlupp, firing at top bin, tying the game at 1 in the 87th minute, which is how it would end. Newcastle hosted Sheffield United, and much like their game in Old Trafford, the visiting Sheffield kind of shocked their hosts. Ahmed Hozic would score from a short corner kick, putting the bottom of the league table up 1-0 at St. James Park, but that just woke up a sleeping Newcastle beast. Alexander Isak would equalize in the first half, and then in a 27-minute period in the second half, Newcastle would score 4 goals as they secured the much-needed 5-1 win. Manchester United hosted Burnley in another game that should have easily been handled by United, but that was not the case. No goals until the 79th minute when Antony would intercept a dreadful Burnley pass and score a wonderful goal. But then late, Burnley crossed it into the box and Casemiro tried to head it back to his keeper, who in the process just took out a Burnley player. It was messy. VAR confirmed the foul, and Zeki Mdouni would step up to the spot and tie it up, securing the 1-1 draw. A huge result for Burnley, but more disappointed for United and their fans. Everton picked up their 3rd straight win in the Premier League, beating Brentford through an Idrissa Gueye goal in the 60th minute. Aston Villa hosted Chelsea, and Villa looked to try and stay in those Champions League spots. They forced a Chelsea own goal just minutes into the game, and Morgan Rogers would double the home side's lead just before halftime. But in the second half, we saw a Chelsea team that we kind of expect to see week in and week out. They dominate possession. They get a goal by Noni Madueke, and then following pressure that would lead to that goal. And then that would lead to another wonderful goal by Conor Gallagher, who would tie the game up at 2, and that's how it ended, showing Chelsea maybe does in fact have a heart. Bournemouth easily took care of Brighton at home, beating them 3-0, and Brighton continues to struggle in the Premier League, winless now in their last 6 matches. Tottenham hosted Arsenal in another London derby involving two teams that hate each other. Arsenal looked phenomenal in the first half, going up 3-0 in the first 38 minutes, and things were looking bad for Tottenham. But after Christian Romero got an easy goal from a terrible giveaway by Arsenal keeper David Raya, they started to get some life in Tottenham. They get a late penalty chance, and Son would score from the spot, making for a nervy ending, but Arsenal would hold on for the 3-2 win, keeping their title hopes alive while also hurting rival Tottenham's chances at Champions League play next season. Man City would stay stride and stride with Arsenal as they went on the road, beating Forest 2-0. Goals by Gvardiol and Erling Haaland were the difference. So that brings us to this Premier League table, and after another disappointing result for Liverpool, they've not a really good chance of winning the Premier League now. They need to win their games and have some results go in their favor. Arsenal sit alone at the top of the league with 80 points, with their 1 point advantage over second place City. But remember, City does have that game in hand, so they really control their own destiny. If City win out, they would win their 4th straight title, their 6th title in 7 years. Like I said, Liverpool's in that 3rd spot. They're 75 points, have them 5 behind the leaders, and not looking good for them. Villa have the 4th spot, 7 points ahead of Tottenham, but Tottenham have 2 games in hand. So we look at the bottom of the table, the zone you don't want to be in, that relegation zone. Sheffield United sit in the last spot and have clinched their spot in the drop zone. The other 2 relegation spots are up between 3 teams. Right now, Burnley sit in 19th with 24 points, and Luton sit in 18th with 25. Nottingham Forest sit just above the drop zone with 26 points. So the last 3 matches in the Premier League will be especially tight for those clubs. So big match on Thursday this upcoming week with Chelsea hosting Tottenham. That game is Champions League implications for Tottenham involved, and their rivals would love nothing more to ruin those chances. Coppa Italia, we'll do some Italian jumping here. We'll go to some midweek footy for the second leg of the Coppa Italia semifinals. Lazio hosted Juventus, with Juventus leading 2-0 on aggregate. But the home side came out firing. Valentin Castellanos would score a brace and tie things up on 2 on aggregate. And it looked like things were going their way. Juventus had to make some substitutes, and man, did they step up. American Timothy Weah's low cross was met by Milik, who scored in the 83rd minute, putting Juventus up 3-2 in aggregate, and that'd be enough to punch their ticket to the Coppa Italia final. So who would be playing Juventus in this domestic cup final? Atalanta hosting Fiorentina, with the host coming in with a 1-0 lead on aggregate. Fortuitous balance led the Koopminers scoring and tying the game up at 1. Fiorentina would then go a man down when Milenkovic took down Samaka and was given a straight red card. This strangely inspired the 10-man side as they regained the lead on aggregate through a Lucas Corda goal. Samaka would unleash an absolute rocket to go up in the match, but more importantly tie it up on aggregate. And this game looked destined for extra time, but Atalanta would get goals by Ademola Lookman and a penalty by Mario Pasalic, giving Atalanta the big win as they come back to win 4-2 on aggregate. Atalanta will now face Juventus in the Coppa Italia final on May 15th, and Juventus will be looking to raise the Coppa Italia trophy for the 15th time in their club's history, the most recent being in 2021, while Atalanta have only won this competition once, and it was back in 1962-63. So exciting times for their fans. Udinese hosted Roma in a very brief battle midweek to finish off the last 18 minutes of their match. The game was tied at 1 when Roma defender Evan Ndicka collapsed on the pitch and the match was called, as talked about on this podcast. But the teams met up in a schedule-filled time of the season to wrap up this match, and it looked like it was destined for a draw, but 4 minutes in the stoppage time, Roma's Brian Cristante would head the ball in from a corner kick, and Roma would secure the big 3 points in the win. That led into the weekend play out in Italy, and it would kick off with Frosinone hosting bottom of the table Salernitana. This game was all Frosinone, as they would easily secure the 3-0 win. Lecce would host Monza in a match where we'd see no goals until after the 90th minute mark. Yeah, that's wild. A Lecce long ball from the keeper was headed on to Kristovic, who fired the ball home in the 92nd minute, sending the home Lecce crowd into a frenzy, only for an immediate response. From the ensuing kickoff, Monza just launched it deep, huck it, chuck it, hope for the best. A freaky bounce had the ball bounce up and strike a Lecce defender's arm. An unlucky bounce, I don't know, depending on who you're rooting for, I guess. guess. But this gave Monza a penalty opportunity, and Matteo Pessina would score from the spot, securing the point in a 1-1 draw. Like I said, 2 goals within minutes of each other after the 90th minute mark. It's crazy. Lazio hosted Verona, and the home side dominated possession. Chance after chance, they just could not find the back of the net. Then the 72nd minute, Mattia Zacchini would finally score and give Lazio the 1-0 win at home. Inter Milan looked the dominant team against Torino, but we'd go in the halftime scoreless. Early in the second half, Inter would get taken down on the run. At first it was a yellow, but VAR would upgrade that shit to a red, and Tamizi would get dismissed from the game in the 49th minute. Totally inspiring and already inspired Inter club, and you'd get 2 goals from Hakan Calhanoglu in 4 minutes. The first, a wide open shot that easily beat the keeper. The second was a brutal tackle in the box where Calhanoglu would step up and knock it in from there, easily securing the 2-0 win for the already crowned Serie A champions. An Udinese attack in the first half stoppage time led to Piero finding the back of the net. The visitors took a 1-0 lead into halftime. Things would get worse for homeside Bologna when Udinese would go on a 2-on-1 break, and Sambucchima would take out one of the attacking players, getting a straight red card in the 64th minute. But that, strangely, like it did earlier in the talk here, inspired the 10-man side, where a free kick in a dangerous position led to Bologna tying it up. Alexis Salamakers looked a cross one into the box, but his cross went on target, tricking the keeper, tying the game at 1 in the 78th minute, and that's just how it would end. A battle of 2 tough teams in the Serie A as Napoli hosted Roma. It was a tightly contested game with no goals being scored in the first half. We'd get our first in the 59th through a penalty when Roma was on the attack, and I'll admit it was a very soft penalty call, but Roma would get the penalty and Dybala would convert from the spot, putting them up 1-0. Not even 5 minutes later, though, Napoli's Oliveira tried a shot from way out, and it took a crazy deflection, looping over the keeper and going in and tying the game at 1. And Napoli would go on the attack and appeal for a penalty. It wasn't given, but VAR would step in and give the penalty, where Victor Osimhen would step up and score from the spot, giving Napoli their first lead in the match. But after 84 minutes, giving them the 2-1 lead after 84 minutes. Roma would spawn quickly for this one, not even 4 minutes after the go-ahead goal. Roma's Tammy Abraham would find himself alone in the box, and he'd score, tying the game at 2, which is how it would end. Atalanta continued their great play, hosting Empoli and beating them 2-0. Goals by midweek scorers, like I mentioned earlier, Pasalic and Lukman, they got the goals, and that was enough for the win. Fiorentina made up for getting knocked out of the Coppa Italia by taking their anger out on relegation, battling Sassuolo. The home side would smash the visitors 5-1. Genoa hosted Cagliari to end the match week, and Genoa would get 2 first-half goals by the Mortons. First Morten Horsby, and then Morten Frendrup, and then Albert Gudmundsson would add a third in the second half, and Genoa secured the 3-0 home win. Looking at the table, we already know Inter Milan's won the title. Second place, we have AC Milan with 70 points. Behind them in third is Juventus with 65. Fourth place, Bologna is in range of passing AC Milan as they're just 2 points behind them. Roma sitting outside the top 4, 4 points behind Bologna. But look out for Atalanta, who have 57 points in sixth and have a game in hand. Even though the title is decided, there's plenty of jostling for those European competition spots. The bottom of the table, we know Salernitana have clinched their relegation fate. It's the other 2 spots that are still available, though. Excuse me. Currently, Sassuolo in 19th place with 26 points, and Udinese are in 18th with 29, but things are tight from 14th to 19th. 14th spot, Cagliari, 32 points. Behind them, Verona, Frosinone, and Empoli, all tied at 31. So there are 6 teams that are in the mix for those last 2 remaining drop spots. So some real drama at the bottom end of the table, which is good because we already know Inter's won this thing. We go to Germany for the Bundesliga, kicked off with Bochum hosting Hoffenheim. Bochum's Kevin Stoger opened with such a nice free kick, leaving the keeper standing in his place. They doubled their lead off a defensive miscue when Felix Paslik scored in the first half stoppage time. Then the 64th, Stoger would get his second, and Bochum were up 3-0 after 64 minutes. But Hoffenheim have been comeback kings all year, and they did what they do. So we're going 2 goals in 11 minutes, but it was too little too late as Bochum held on dearly for the 3-2 home win. Augsburg hosted Werder Bremen, and after Bremen had a goal disallowed in the first half, they'd make up for it in the second. 3 second-half goals gave Werder Bremen the 3-0 win over Augsburg. Freiburg hosted Wolfsburg in an exciting bout. The home side opened the scoring when Doan went across the ball and it got redirected by a Wolfsburg defender into his own net, giving Freiburg the 1-0 lead. But in the second half, Freiburg's Kilian Sedelia would harshly bring down a Wolfsburg player, leading to a red card, and they'd have to play the last 25 minutes of the match a man down. This sparks Wolfsburg. In the 82nd minute, Maximilian Arnold's free kick banged off the post and in. Lovely shot. And the game was tied at 1, but Freiburg, despite being a man down, would get a penalty chance. Roland Salai would step up and he'd slip as he went to kick it, skying the ball over the net. And that was huge because in the 90th minute, Wolfsburg defender Maxence Lacroix looked like a striker, smashing the ball into the top corner from outside the box and clinching the big 2-1 win for Wolfsburg. Bayern Munich hosted Frankfurt, and the Bavarian Giants scored early when Harry Kane finished a counterattack just 9 minutes into the match. The 23rd minute, 21-year-old Frenchman Hugo Ekitike showed off some nice footwork before curling his shot into the corner, tying the game at 1. The game stayed that way until around the 1 hour mark when Thomas Müller would get hit in the face. It was a soft penalty, I thought, too, but he'd go down. Harry Kane scored from the spot. Big 2-1 win for Bayern Munich. Leipzig hosted Dortmund in a match that was very important to potential European play next season. Dortmund was hoping for a big result, but may have had their eye on the upcoming Champions League fixture they were participating in. Jadon Sancho would open the scoring for the visitors in the 20th minute when he'd curl his shot into the top corner. He would then shush the Leipzig home crowd, and that last action might have backfired, because just 3 minutes later, a quick attack ended with Xavi Simons curling a beauty of a pass with the outside of his boot right into the path of Lois Openda, who scored the goal and tied it up at 1. The first half stoppage time, Leipzig would take their first league through Benjamin Sesko, and then they led 2-1 going in the halftime. In the second frame, it would take less than a minute for Mohamed Simakin to get Leipzig's third goal. And then the 80th minute, Baumgartner would put the nail in the coffin. Big 4-1 win for Leipzig, crushing Dortmund. The unbeatens were looking to keep their streak going in a tough match against Stuttgart. After a scoreless first half, the visitors opened the scoring in the 47th minute. Leverkusen keeper Heredecki would make a save, but the ball would strike the post, come to Chris Furich, who would score and make it 1-0. Not even 9 minutes later, Stuttgart would double their lead. Chris Undav would take advantage of a defensive miscue and fire the ball into the net, doubling Stuttgart's lead, again shushing the home crowd in the process. And just like another shusher mentioned, this backfired for Stuttgart. 5 minutes later, Amin Adli would curl his shot into the net, and bringing the Leverkusen faithful back into this game. Things were getting late, and it looked like maybe the first defeat was about to happen. But just like they've done all season, a late free kick led to Robert Andrich firing the ball through a crowded box and into the net, tying the game at 2, securing the draw. Stuttgart, like many other teams, were so close to taking them down. But now Leverkusen unbeaten in 46 across all competitions, a new European record. Leverkusen are unbeaten in all 31 Bundesliga matches, winners of 25 while drawing 6. A fairly even match between Mönchengladbach and Union Berlin ended in neither team finding the goal, and it would end in a goalless draw. Mainz was hosting Köln in a game involving relegation battling teams. The home side would go ahead early when they forced Köln keeper into making a save, only for the rebound to come to Leandro Barreiro, who found the back of the net. Mainz were up 1-0 after 29 minutes. Köln tried to keep their slim survival hopes alive when they made a late cross into the box, and Mainz keeper would take out the attacking player, giving Köln a stoppage time penalty. VAR confirmed the decision. Florian Kainz would step up from the spot, tying the game at 1 after 95 minutes. Then to make things worse for Mainz, Mwenni picked up a red card soon after, and they'd finish with 10 men. A game that I guess deserved to be 1-1, but both teams were really looking for a win that one. Darmstadt hosted Heidenheim in a game that featured plenty of chances, but not a lot of goals. We'd get one goal, and it would come in the 90th minute. Heidenheim would go on the attack, and a low cross that should have been cleared instead went through the defender's legs to a wide-open Dovden, who would easily score. The visitors would secure the 1-0 win. That ending of the match kind of sums up how Darmstadt's season in the Bundesliga has been this year. So that brings us to the Bundesliga table. After 31 games, we already know Leverkusen has the title secured. They're still doing it while remaining unbeaten. In the second spot, Bayern Munich with 69 points. Stuttgart just behind them in third with 64. And holding down that fourth spot is Leipzig. They now have a 5-point cushion over fifth place Dortmund, with Leipzig widening that gap with their 4-1 win over Dortmund this weekend. Darmstadt's lost this weekend. They have secured their fate of relegation. Cologne sit at 23 points in the 17th spot, 5 points behind the team they drew with this weekend, Mainz. Mainz sit in 16th with 30 points in that relegation playoff spot. But teams up to 12th are still in play. Wolfsburg at 34, Mönchengladbach 32, and Union Berlin and Bochum both at 30. A lot of teams still involved here, so you can't take your foot off here. Going to Spain for the La Liga, Real Sociedad hosted Real Madrid in a very wet, rainy match. It would be the 19-year-old Turkish midfielder who would get his first goal in his Real Madrid La Liga debut. The ball came to Arda Güler, and he'd find the back of the net in the 29th minute, and that was the only goal of the match as Real Madrid secured the big 1-0 win. Las Palmas was hosting Girona and got an early opportunity from the penalty spot. Girona keeper Gazanga made a big save to keep the score at 0s, and Girona would then get a penalty chance. And Las Palmas keeper Valles made a save, again keeping it at 0s. But the rebound from that came to David Lopez, and he'd score. So we would get a goal, 1-0 Girona after 26 minutes. Then the second half, you guessed it, another penalty chance. This time Girona's Artem Dovbek would score from the spot. Big 2-0 road win for Girona, and Las Palmas now winless in their last 9 La Liga matches. Their last win in the La Liga came in February 10th against Valencia. Yikes. Bottom of the table club Almeria was hosting Getafe. The visitors went off to a great start when they'd go on a 2-0 breakaway, and Englishman Mason Greenwood would score, putting Getafe up 1-0 after 27 minutes. Just before the halftime whistle, though, the home side would equalize, and Almeria's shot would produce a save, but the ball would come to Anthony Lozano, who tied the game up in the 41st minute. The second half was all Getafe's. Greenwood would get his second of the match, and Jamie Mata would ice the game late. Almeria's Jonathan Vera would get 2 yellow cards within 5 minutes of each other, and he was dismissed. Another tough loss for Almeria as they fall 3-1 to Getafe. Alaves hosted Celta Vigo, and after a scoreless first half, the home side really took over. Goals by Giuliano Simeone, John Guaretti, and Carlos Benavides put Alaves out of reach, and they secured the big 3-0 win. Celta Vigo never even registered a shot in that game, despite having much more of the possession. A very important match that had European competition implications. Atletico Madrid hosting Athletic Bilbao. Atletico were looking to get some revenge on a club that had knocked them out of the semifinals of the Copa del Rey. And a quarter of an hour in, Rodrigo de Paul would have his deflected shot go in, and the home side led 1-0. The stroke of halftime, the visitors would respond when Nico Williams scored to tie it up. But just 7 minutes into the second half, Atletico retook the lead when Angel Correa would find himself alone and find the finish. Then Atletico would ice the game when Lino's shot struck the post, the ricochet off Bilbao keeper Unai Simon, and back into the net. Massive 3 points on the table for Atletico Madrid over Athletic Bilbao, but we'll get more to that in a bit. Cadiz hosts Mallorca, and Mariki would put the visitors up early with a nice header. Mallorca having the 1-0 lead to just 12 minutes in. But Cadiz would turn up the pressure a bit in the second half and get rewarded for it. A difficult ball into the box needed to be handled, and defender Omar Mascarell did not handle it well, knocking it into his own net, tying the game at 1, which is how that game would end. Another important match in the La Liga table had Granada hosting Osasuna. The home side opened the scoring after 29 minutes when Pelistri blasted it home from short range. That's how the scoreline looked going in the halftime, but not even 3 minutes into the second half, Granada would double their lead. It looked tight, but Mirdo Uzini stayed on side and finished clinically. Then putting away the game in stoppage time, Lucas Boye scored to make it 3-0. Big win for Granada. Villarreal hosted Rayo Vallecano. Norwegian striker Alexander Sorloth put the home side up after just 18 minutes. And after VAR disallowed 2 of Villarreal's goals, they'd get one that actually counted. Mosquera showed off his strength, getting his header to beat the keeper. Alexander Sorloth would get his second of the game, his 17th on the season out in the La Liga season, icing the game for Villarreal as they took the 3-0 win. It's crazy. Sorloth here. You got Rasmus Højlund with Man U. You got Odegaard with Arsenal. There's a lot of really talented Norwegian players playing in some big games here. Real Betis hosted Sevilla in a highly anticipated matchup. The home side looked to go up early, but the ageless wonder Sergio Ramos cleared the ball off the line for Sevilla. The home side would get their chance off a tough. Some of these hand calls in the boxes are tough. Like the future of footy players are armless players. I'm telling you, they won't get the penalties. But Isco would step up, convert from the spot, giving Betis the 1-0 first half lead. But 11 minutes into the second half, Kiki Salas would score with a header, tying the game at 1, and that's how it would end. Fairly even game that probably deserved to finish 1-1. The last game of the match was a big one, Barcelona hosting Valencia, and Barca opening the scoring when Fermin Lopez would head the ball in from a nice cross, putting the home side up 1-0 after 22 minutes. But after a wonderful through ball led to Hugo Duro going on the breakaway, Ter Stegen, the Barca keeper, just had to clear it, but he couldn't have played the ball any worse, kind of whiffing on it, leading the Duro going around him and tying the game at 1. And then that was just 5 minutes after Barca's goal. But later in the first half, Ronald Araujo really took down a Valencia player in the box. He's got some bad fouls this year for Barcelona. That awarded them a penalty, and Pepelu would score and put Valencia up 2-1. Deep in the first half stoppage time, things would get really turned on their head. Valencia keeper Georgi Marmadishvili had a back pass come his way, and he had a heavy touch on it, giving it right to Lamine Yamal, and the teenager went to go around the keeper, and he blocked it with his hand outside the box, resulting in a direct red card, and putting a winning Valencia team down for the entirety of the second half. And this woke up the Catalan Giants. Lewandowski put the team on his back, scoring a header just 4 minutes into the second half. VAR reviewed it, and the goal stood, and the game was tied at 2. Another corner, another Lewandowski goal, getting the go-ahead header with his second on the night. The Big Pole would then complete his hat-trick, scoring off a lovely free kick. Big 4-2 win for Barcelona, which has us looking at the table. Real Madrid sit atop the lead with an 11-point cushion with this 5 games to play, so they have the title in their sights here. Barcelona sit in that second spot with Girona just 2 points behind them in the third spot. And I just got to say, such a remarkable season from Girona. They finished 10th last season in the Liga, and they're now fighting for a European spot. Atletico Madrid doubled their gap over Athletic Bilbao with that massive win over the weekend I mentioned, keeping them in the 4th spot. Looking at the bottom of the Liga, we already know bottom side Almeria is getting relegated. That recent Granada win over Osasuna was massive, though, as they are in 9th place with 21 points, but they do have a slim chance of surviving this battle. Cadiz is sitting 18th with 26 points in that last relegation spot. And with just 5 games to go, a lot of movement can happen, especially teams 14 to 17. I mean, Las Palmas should be clear of the drop zone, but they're winless in their last 9. Rayo Vallecano, Mallorca, and Celta Vigo are all within striking distance of Cadiz at least. So you can't take your foot off the gas there. And Ligue 1, the French top division, there were some makeup games this midweek. PSG went on the road and spanked Lorient 4-1. Marseille and Nice played a competitive game with the game tied at 1. Marseille would go a man down when Mbanya picked up his second yellow card. But early in the second half, Marseille's Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang put Marseille up for the first time, only for Melvin Bard to equalize in the 72nd minute, and that game ended in a 2-2 draw. Monaco hosted Lille in a potential top 4 battle, and it looked like Monaco was dispossessed off a throw-in, but they got the ball right back, and Youssouf Fofana would fire home a low hard shot, beating the keeper and securing the 1-0 win for Monaco. That midweek play led into some weekend fixtures where we'd have some drama with Montpellier and Nantes. Montpellier scored just 2 minutes into the match, and then a counterattack led to Adams finding the back of the net, but only for Mathis Abeline to respond just 5 minutes later from a giveaway. And that'd be it for goals. Montpellier would get 2 direct red cards in stoppage time, but despite that, the game ended 1-1. PSG had a chance to clinch the Ligue 1 title in their match with Le Havre, and on a rainy night, the visitors did not want to make it easy. Le Havre would open the scoring in the 19th minute through Christopher Operi, but Bradley Barcola would respond just 10 minutes later for PSG. But again, Le Havre would go ahead in the 38th minute when Andre Ayew would score. And then Le Havre increased their lead in the second half in the 61st minute when Touré converted from the penalty spot. Going down 2 goals, that really woke up the Parisian side. First, Hakimi would get one back. Then 5 minutes in the stoppage time, Gonzalo Ramos would score, spoiling the big moment for Le Havre. But to be fair, PSG did have the ball for 78% of the game, so they did probably deserve some kind of points. Metz hosted Lille, and it surprised the visitors when they opened the scoring from a penalty just 23 minutes in. Another tough handball in the box led to George Mikadadze scoring from the spot. He's been on fire lately. But Lille would respond later in the first half, Ismaili scoring in the 31st minute and Yusuf Yassisi scoring in the 44th to make it 2-1. The second half would produce no goals, even though Lille had 71% of the ball. They did hold on to the 2-1 win. Lorient hosted Toulouse and looked the better team throughout the first half, opening the scoring when Julien Ponceau in the 19th minute knocked it in after a flurry of chances. But it was a tale of two halves, though, and in the second, Toulouse would get their things going here. Delingo would score in the 59th to tie it up, before Ibrahim Sissoko scored the winner in the 83rd minute. Like I said, big comeback 2-1 win for Toulouse. And poor Lorient now, they've gone 7 games without a win as they fall into relegation woes. And one of the weirdest scorelines of the weekend was bottom of the table side Clermont Foot hosting Reims. A tough handball in the box led to a home side getting a penalty chance where Cham would score to take the 1-0 lead. Very short-lived, though, and less than 2 minutes later, Reims equalized through Nakamura. In the second half, VAR found a pulled jersey in the box and a crossing attempt, leading to another Clermont Foot penalty chance and another goal from Cham. Clermont Foot looked to keep their foot on the gas, and this caused Thibaut de Smet to prevent the attack, resulting in a straight red card. A little harsh, but the call nonetheless. This extra man advantage led to Clermont Foot getting 2 more goals through Elbasan Rashani. Massive result as Clermont Foot stunned Reims 4-1. Strasbourg hosted Nice and caught the visitors off guard in the 18th minute with Bakwa. The lead lasted until late in the first half when Nice was awarded a penalty and Evan Gussand scored from the spot. And that opened the floodgates. Dante scored just 7 minutes into the second half and Morgan Sanson iced the game late. Big road win for Nice, winning 3-1. The highest scoring match of the weekend we had between two teams that kind of are like me, Rennes and Brest. The home side, Rennes, would get off to a perfect start. 2 goals in the first 11 minutes by Arnold Calamiondo, and the team sitting pretty. But just 2 minutes after that, Steve Mooney would get one back for Brest, and we'd go into halftime with Rennes up 2-1. Just 3 minutes into the second half, Brest would force an own goal, tying the game at 2. And then 6 minutes after that, Martin Satriano would give Brest their first lead at the game, going up 3-2. The 66th minute, Camera would put Brest up 4-2, but then not even 2 minutes later, Rennes would get one back. In the 79th, Terrier would tie it up, and the game looked destined for a draw until the 6th minute stoppage time, where Brassier would knock one in for a free kick, sending Bressois to a 5-4 win over Rennes. Just a crazy game, that one. Another big match of teams, Lyon hosting Monaco, a flare-filled stadium where the visitors opened the scoring in the first minute of the match, where Ben Yedder scored, but it was called offside. VAR intervened and corrected the call, resulting in a goal. I mean, it was pretty smoky from the flares, so it was tough to see. The 22nd minute, home side tied it up. Lacazette found the back of the net, and it was 1-1. But just 4 minutes later, former West Ham player Saïd Benrahma would score, putting Lyon up 2-1. Stayed that way in about the hour mark when Ben Yedder would score his second of the match. And then the 84th, we get our game winner. Lyon substitute Fofana would time his run perfectly, setting up a one-on-one with the keeper, and he'd score. Big win for Lyon on the road, and a loss that had some significance for PSG, but we'll get to that right away. The Ligue weekend wrapped up with Marseille hosting Lens. Not even a minute into the match, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang would put the hosts up 1-0. It stayed that scoreline most of the game until Lens tied it up in the 77th minute through a Wesley Saïd header. In the 85th minute, a terrible Lens pass led to an easy setup for Pape Gueye. Big 2-1 win for Marseille. So now we look at that table, and you'll see why that Monaco loss, what that did to the table. It clinched the title for PSG. They're third in a row and a record-extending 12th overall. Monaco sits second in the division, 12 points behind the champions with just 3 games to be played. Brest are 2 points behind Monaco for that second spot, and Lille round out the top 4, just 1 point behind Brest. Looking at the bottom of the table, it's pretty tight. That big win for Clermont Foot keeps their slim hopes of surviving alive. They'll need some help, though. Clermont Foot sit at the bottom of the table with 25 points. Lorient just above them with 1 point ahead. Metz sit in that relegation playoff spot, 3 points above Lorient, and even on points with Le Havre, who have a slightly better goal difference. Strasbourg are in 13th with 36, and Nantes in 14th with 32, so they could still be caught. Excuse me, lots of drama left there. Before going to the European competition, quick wrap up of the EFL pyramid in the UK. Leicester City's 3-0 win over Preston clinched the EFL Championship crown. Jamie Vardy scoring a brace to help get his team back in the Premier League. Second place, Ipswich Town moving back in the second with their win over Coventry. And that makes things very interesting going to the last day of the championship season, which takes place Saturday, May 4th. Leicester City has the title, but that second spot also gets you automatic promotion, while third to sixth have a playoff for that last spot. I mentioned Ipswich Town currently has that second spot. A draw or win against relegation-bound Huddersfield would secure the position and give them automatic promotion. However, if Ipswich lose to Huddersfield and Leeds beat Southampton, Leeds would secure that promotion spot. And then the last playoff spot, you have sixth place West Brom, losers of the last three matching hosting Preston, and a tie win would secure that spot. However, if they fall to Preston and Hull City beat Plymouth Argyle, it would be Hull City participating in those playoffs. Lots of drama entering the last weekend of the AFL Championship. The league below the EFL, the Championship, the Ligue 1, not to be confused with the French Ligue 1, that is concluded with Portsmouth winning the title and Derby County joining them in promotion to the Championship, leaving the playoffs for that last promotion spot. Sixth place Barnsley hosting third place Bolton in the first leg of their semi-final, with fifth place Oxford United hosting fourth place Peterborough. Those matches take place this Saturday, with the second legs taking place next Tuesday and Wednesday. The four teams getting relegated to League Two are last place Carlisle, Port Vale, Fleetwood, and Cheltenham. Fleetwood was the longest tenured League One side until this recent relegation. Wrapping up the EFL pyramid, we go to the League Two. Stockport won the division, earning instant promotion. Even though they lost to this team, Disney's favorite club, Wrexham, they also earned promotion, finishing second in the league, and Mansfield Town earned promotion with their third place finish, which leaves us with the playoff spot for that last promotion spot. Number 7 Crawley Town hosting number 4 side MK Downs. Number 6 side Crew Alexander hosting number 5 Doncaster. Those first leg matches will be played Monday, May 6th, with the second leg being played Thursday and Friday. Those two teams dropping to the National League are Forest Green and Sutton United. Chesterfield won the National League, will be promoted to League 2, while the other spot will be decided in that playoff final this upcoming Sunday, with third place Bromley taking on number 5 Solihull Moors. Watching that Wrexham documentary, you can see how hard it is to get out of the National League, so there'll be a lot of fans tuning into that game Sunday. Champions League first leg. I was not even going to mention this because I was supposed to have it previewed, but hey, here we are. Bayern Munich, Real Madrid. Big game, big semifinal first match. Real Madrid opened the scoring in the first half when a perfectly weighted pass by Toni Kroos was met by Vinicius Jr. He'd score, putting the visitors up 1-0 after 24 minutes. After the halftime whistle, it took only 8 minutes to get a goal in the second half, with Leroy Sané going on a nice run, firing it past the keeper to tie the game. And just minutes later, Musiala was taken down in the box and Bayern was awarded a penalty, where Harry Kane would step up and convert, putting Bayern up 2-1 after just being down 1-0. With around 10 minutes left in the 90, Rodrigo would get taken down in the Bayern box, leading Vinicius Jr. to step up and convert from the spot. His second of the match tied the game at 2, ending the match in Germany, tied at 2. I can't wait for that second leg in the Bernabeu. Dortmund versus PSG. Now, this one's going on today, and I can throw a prediction on this. I love the home atmosphere at Dortmund. I love what they possess, but PSG is not one of those teams that gets flustered by opposing fans. So I think Dortmund will do enough to win this game. I'm sure they'll win 2-1 or something, with Füllkrug or Brandt scoring late, but we'll see. The second leg of those fixtures take place next week, PSG versus Dortmund on Tuesday, with Real Madrid hosting Bayern the following day. The younger sibling of the Champions League, the Europa League, has their semi-final first leg matches this week too. Games taking place Thursday, May 2nd. French side Marseille hosting Italian side Atalanta. Both teams playing really well as of late, and that one should be exciting. The next match would feature Roma hosting the unbeaten Leverkusen. I mentioned it before, how they have not lost in any competition all season. They'll have their work cut out for them traveling to the Italian capital to take on Daniel De Rossi's side. In these first legs, I have both of them ending in a draw. We'll see. And the following legs will take place the next week. To the even younger sibling of the Champions League, the Europa Conference League, the league that my West Ham lifted the trophy of last year. These semi-final first legs take place this Thursday as well. Premiership side, and the last one remaining in European competition. Aston Villa host Greek side Olympiacos. The other semi-final features Italian side Fiorentina hosting Belgian side Club Bruges. I'm thinking Villa win that match at home, and Fiorentina will do the same. And the second leg of those matches will be taking place the following week. MLS, kind of running long on time, so I'm not going to jump too much into that. All you got to know is Inter Miami and Messi are leading the East after their last big win. But I do like what the MLS is doing with these new initiatives to reduce time wasting. What they do now is if an injured player is down for more than 15 seconds, he has to leave the field and remain off the field for 2 minutes. Kind of like that. Subs also have 10 seconds to leave the pitch. Otherwise, the player coming on has to wait 60 seconds before coming on. And with VAR announcements, they're going to announce them in the stadium as well to reduce the head scratching. So I got to admit, I hate the time wasting. I think it's a bunch of tomfoolery every time you try to show someone the sport and you see that bullshit. So I'm hoping these new initiatives work. Bringing us to Major League Baseball. It's been in full swing, kind of getting overshadowed a bit with the NHL and NBA playoffs. More on where you can find the NBA playoff recaps in a bit. But there have been some good games going on. Not so many this past week if you're a Blue Jays fan. They dropped 3 of 4 in Kansas City against the Royals before heading home and barely avoiding a 3-game sweep to the Dodgers. The Jays have rekindled their battle with the Royals, this time hosting them. Thus far into their 3-game series, the teams have split the series, with the tiebreaker going on this afternoon in Toronto. The Blue Jays then go on the road to take on the Washington Nationals this weekend. And this tough week has put the Blue Jays near the AL East basement. The Orioles are leading the division as they are in a 4-game series with the second-place Yankees, and the Orioles are doing pretty well in that series right now. The Red Sox follow suit with the Jays just behind them, while the Tampa Bay Rays sit in the basement. And like I said, a very tough division. Looking at the AL Central, the Cleveland Guardians still leading their division. The Royals, Tigers, and Twins all above 500 and playing pretty well, though. The Royals beating the Jays in that series helped. The White Sox are now up to 6 wins on the season in that division. Going out to AL West, the Mariners still leading the AL West. The Texas Rangers are the only other team above 500 in that division. The Athletics, Angels, and Astros are all struggling. More tough news for the struggling Angels, too. Often injured Mike Trout did just that again. While leading the majors in home runs, Mike Trout suffered a torn meniscus in his left knee, which is requiring surgery, which will keep him out a few months, adding more pain to the Angels fans who have already lost Shohei Ohtani in free agency, and he looks pretty good in Dodgers colors. We'll go to the National League, where the Braves still sit atop the NL East with the Phillies nipping at their heels. Mets and Nationals are playing with similar records around the middle of that division, while the Marlins sitting in the basement with just 7 wins on the season. The NL Central is looking like a division with some tough teams. The Brewers have a slight lead over the Cubs in the top of that division. The Reds, Cardinals, and Pirates all sitting around 500, with the Pirates suddenly falling to the basement of the division. Going to the NL West, I mentioned those Dodgers. They're finding their groove and leading the division, while every other team is under 500 in the NL West. The Giants, Padres, and Diamondbacks have similar records, while the Colorado Rockies are really struggling in that division. And a weird game delay in that division. The Dodgers-Diamondbacks game was delayed due to bees. It looked wild. Like, I knew there was a lot of buzz surrounding that game, but come on. Which brings us to our short. Like I said, the episode was a little delayed airing. My bad about that. But it's wild, and the sports have been wild. So let's think of some wild times. Think of a time when me and some buddies went to Calgary to check out our friend's new place as he was about to go to school there. Thought we'd catch the Calgary Stampede as well and have some good time, you know. Young boys from Warman going to Calgary in our early 20s. You know, we were a little over our head there, ripping bong hoots on the balcony of his new place, trying to lay incognito. And, you know, we'd look at the sketchy Calgary city below. It was a great trip, though. Checking out the Stampede was awesome. I had never been. First only time I've ever seen Our Lady Peace play. Some Canadian rock royalty there. We went to the French Maid, and if you're a young man in Calgary, you may have been to the French Maid, a gentleman's club, if you would. Popping my stripper viewing cherry for the first time. It's a pretty goofy dude, long hair, kind of snapping photos at everything I was seeing with my fancy flip phone. And I had changed the settings on this flip phone where every time you took a picture, my phone would go, "Say cheese." So my phone was just shouting nonstop, "Say cheese, say cheese." And I'm just getting all the shots, grinning like an idiot. And then a dancer pointed me out where I just waved. And then the bouncer came and took my phone, threatened to break it, but just deleted tons of pictures, including a bunch from the Our Lady Peace concert. At least I didn't get my ass kicked. Later on that evening, I also removed a parking ticket from someone's windshield and replaced it with a branch. So that was a real dick mood. When shitty things happen to me, I think of that moment. But was another crazy event that happened on this trip was a very bad pot exchange. And this was before you could just go down to any pot shop just down the street. Like, me and my other buddy, we didn't want to wake up the buddy's place. Like, we knew we'd have to wake him up to get back in the apartment. We didn't want to wake him up, come back down. So we're like, we can get weed out here. We'll figure it out. So let's just say allegedly, okay, I was pretty drunk, but allegedly we tried to get some weed from, let's say, this guy was definitely a crackhead, you know, and we gave him $60 to get us some pot. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll leave it under this truck tire. He just pointing, and we're like, okay, he's gonna leave the weed by the truck tire. Okay, so we're watching him, and yeah, he just goes up to the truck and bolts. He's gone. And I'm like, holy shit, you look like Tyreek Hill from the Dolphins. Like, we started running. We were like, we're catching this guy, you know, a crackhead with money in his hand. That's like playing Mario Kart and getting a star. He was gone. But other than that alleged $60 lost, it's a really good time in Calgary. Try to do some more road trips with your friends, you know. They're good times that might end a little wild, but you never know what happens. You might not regret it. But hey, episode 60 in the books. Yeah, guys. Coming along. It's just trucking. I'm only reaching my senior ages here. So if you do need NBA news, catch my NBA recaps that come out every week. It's awesome.